Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Now, everything old is new again. America's entertainment pop culture talk show.
It may well possess a rudimentary intelligence.
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
Felt a great disturbance in the force.
Hello, I'm Mr. Red.
Come on, Mark, like a job for me.
Where's the goodies? Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
I bet you wouldn't have done anything like this if Mom and Dad were here.
You filthy criminal.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Here are your hosts, Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
You what? You'll send me a bill?
Yeah. These are, I don't think these can be fixed.
Wait a second.
Yeah,
You're going to send me a bill?
just for the glasses.
Why?
Because they're like $219.
I didn't break your glasses.
It was the hug that broke them. It wasn't you specifically,
Yeah,
but
okay,
you were the one who instigated the hug.
I instigated the hug?
Yeah, I came in for
No,
for a shake.
I came in for a shake, and then I saw you make a move for the hug, so I went in.
Welcome back to Everything Old is New again here. Yet another in a long series of shows that are going to be really exciting and thrilling with David Cohen, Douglas Viviani, the droll, rib-tickling, and amusing David Cohen. David, how are you today?
Oh, that's a new one. I haven't heard that before. I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well. We have a special guest on this week that is really going to blow your mind. It's a gentleman that has appeared in that scene there on Larry David's, of course, Curb Your Enthusiasm as the obnoxious neighbor who fell in love with or was very enamored by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, if you remember that. And he's done many, many, many things. Like Larry goes back to the Larry Sanders Show as Larry's brother Stan was in Legally Blonde, 40-year-old version, Jack Frost, Step Brothers, so many terrific appearances. But to me, this gentleman is a Renaissance man. I'll tell you why. Because he's a ukulele impresario, a comedy writer. He's been nominated for 2 Writers Guild of America awards, 1 Emmy. He's written about Pistol Pete Maravich in a best-selling book, The Life and Times of Pistol Pete Maravich. He's been in commercials all over. He's a producer, writer of published articles, teaches comedy at USC School of Dramatic Arts since 2017. He was the head monologue writer of the first season of The Late Night with David Cohen, The Late Night with Jimmy Fallon show, helping launch that show, which brings us to stand-up comedy, which I think he excels at, though he does all of this well. He's produced a terrific book now called The History of Stand-Up Comedy. A little subtitle there says, From Mark Twain to Dave Chappelle. And we'll talk about and dive into comedy today with Wayne Federman. Wayne, thank you very much for being on Everything Old is New again.
Yeah, well, I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Now, because you've done so much, we have such a long introduction, we only have 3 minutes left, but we'll continue. Let's just start on a little bit here and talk about that you've performed, from what I could see, in comedy clubs since 1977, approximately 34 years by my count. When did you start?
First of all, no, I started in like 82. I mean, I had been performing since high school, but I really count my comedy birth as 1982.
All right, so 28 years. The question
Getting off to a good start here with Wayne.
Well, I'll tell you, Wayne, why? What's been the fascination? What's been the interest in stand-up comedy, and what made you start? Okay,
first of all, your math is way off.
I knew you were going to check me on that. I don't have my
I said 1982. How are you saying that's 28 years?
82, 92, 102. Oh, my goodness, it is a lot of years. David, give me
Yeah, it's over 30. It's over 30. It's almost, yeah.
No, I've already checked out.
You're not good with math, David?
Well, I am. But
he's a CPA.
I'm a CPA. I zoned out for a minute.
But what happened? You should have jumped in. That was your moment.
Correct.
That was your.
I missed it.
But you've been on the stage a long time, Wayne. What?
Many years.
Many
yes,
years.
I have. Yes.
What got you started doing this? What was it all about?
Well, I was a kid. I was a funny kid growing up in a very tense family and didn't get a lot of attention at home. And I found out, like, in school, I was very funny, but not disruptive. Like, I was able to make the teachers laugh and the kids laugh. Like, there was disruptive, make the kids laugh. Like, that was low bar. That's hitting from the ladies' tea, as they used to say. Now I was like, all right, if you can really make the teachers laugh, you have something. So that's what happened, and teacher encouraged me to go into stand-up. And so that's that's what I did, and I've loved it. Attention and approval. I mean, I don't understand who doesn't.
I'll tell you what, who doesn't is someone that goes on stage and can't do it the way you do it, can't do it properly, and can't get the proper laughs, and you stand there and you look at the audience and the mouth is agape. We've seen that many times, David and I, especially growing up, you know. And
have you tried it?
I have tried it.
Have you tried it, Douglas?
Yes, I have. I was on stage in 1979 at East Side Comedy Club in Huntington, Long Island. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
With Richie Minervini.
Of course. It's a famous club. That's Judd Apatow's old club, yeah.
It is, and we had a great time. Bob Nelson was there with us back in the day, and just so terrific an experience for us. But we would be in the audience, of course, most of the time. I was in high school, and I had barely anything to talk about. David later on did some stand up in New York City. David,
yeah, struggled for 4 or 5 years before saying,
Right, so we know what it's like. So when you're up there and you're sweating and you're putting a material out there and trying to really put your best foot forward, and the audience put you in a bad mood because you sort of know that it's you're kind of flopping. It's not so much fun. So when you're doing it, you're getting a different response than we certainly did, and that's, I think.
Well, not always. Not always. I've had my share of tanking it. Douglas Vivian style. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Viviani, actually, yes.
Viviani.
Yes.
Viviani. Sorry, I stand corrected.
Right. It's full of. We all make mistakes. I forgive. I don't know others.
I try to forgive also.
Okay. Now I have a clip here. Just one clip I want to play. Now you were not then doing stand up in around '78 when you met Bob Hope, or did you? Or were you just thinking about doing?
I was not. I was doing I was ventriloquism since high school. So I had been on the stage, but I was not a professional. I was a college kid.
Right. All right, so let's just play this real quick.
Why are you stuck on 1978, Doug? You seem to be really stuck in that.
Because in 78, there was a Federman spotting of and dealing with Mr. Bob Hope himself.
And good luck on your comeback. Anyway, I love it. I was wondering, you do so many shows, and when you do a big show like the Academy Awards, do you still get nervous?
I'd get nervous if I was dressed like you, I'll tell you that.
There you go. A little back and forth between you and Bob Hope. What was that like? What inspired that? Give me a smidge of background. That's amazing.
Well, it's really a very kind of historic show, believe it or not. This is a show called America Live, which was the predecessor to the David Letterman Morning. So it was an NBC show with Art Linkletter's kid hosting it, and Bob Hope was the guest. They wanted, somehow the word trickled down to NYU that he was looking for young comedians to be in the crowd to get from, they thought it would be good. So unbeknownst to me, I was there. He walks by me. I jump up like an idiot. You can hear my voice is super high and nervous. And I was just, I don't know why I had the guts to insult him, but I did. And it went great. And he got a huge kick out of it. But here's the thing, more important than that. Also in the crowd as a young comedian was Jerry Seinfeld in that same thing. I had never seen Jerry Seinfeld, never heard of Jerry Seinfeld. And Seinfeld also asked him a question. So it was the first time Seinfeld had met Bob Hope. So it was like, when I later saw the tape, I was like, okay, this is fun that I'm on this. But they're like two of the greatest to ever do it, to ever walk on the stage, are meeting at this moment.
To get Bob Hope to laugh, did it kind of light a little bit of inspiration or add a little bit to the fire of, gee, I think this is something I may want to dive into? Yeah. I mean, again, I was in college and I was studying acting with the most serious of serious acting teachers, this woman named Stella Adler. And she's into Clifford Odette. She's into Tennessee Williams, and I'm into, like I showed you in your clip earlier, I'm into Mel Brooks and Neil Simon and those guys. So it was great to study with her. I felt like we had a different view of what show business should be. And so I was doing one-man shows even in college. So maybe you're right. Maybe I did start in but if count that, I would count doing talent shows in high school. So I don't know. Just getting on stage and just seeing the reactions, what it is. And Stella Adler, I think I don't know her, but we've interviewed Peter Weller, who was another student of hers, and he's very serious, a really cool guy and everything. But yeah, it seems like that's real like serious acting class. And do you smile and laugh in those classes or no? I mean, what's that about?
We did. I mean, she liked comedy, but it was like she was very much out of the group theater, which was a 1930s kind of left-wingy, progressive sort of, who thought that theater's job was to send a social message. Like, that was the idea behind it. So she was very much entrenched in that world. When she walked into class, you can't be late for her class. If you're late, you're not allowed in the class. She walks in, like making an entrance. Everyone has to stand up till she sits down, then we can sit down. How about that? Have that ever happened in a class for you?
It did. No. It did for me, unfortunately, because I was in law school, so we had the same routine. But that's what I mean. There was no.
You did?
Oh yeah. I'm going to.
For a law professor, still Adler, I get it, but no. Law
when our torts professor came in the door, if you didn't stand up and then sit down and be quiet, you'd be the first one to pick on and make an absolute fool of. Anyway,
what school? May I ask what school this is? I'm curious about you now a little bit.
St. John's School of Law. And we'll leave you with that for one moment and come back.
St. John's.
Yes. I'll be back right at this.
I love it.
And everything old is new again, talking the history of stand-up comedy. History of stand-up's a book. Wayne Federman. We'll get to the history soon.
Thanks for the memory.
Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything old is new again, with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
I liked the name Wayne until the fourth grade when my teacher was like, Wayne is also a word. I go, I did not know that. She goes, yeah, it's a verb. I go, what does it mean, like to run or to play? She's like, oh, no. It means to diminish slowly over time. Are you ready to rock? No, Mr. Dockin, we're not. There's 12,000 of us here. We've been chanting your name for 20 minutes. We're wasted. We're here to do a roundtable on the Peloponnesian War. We thought... We don't need no education. Oh, yeah? Well, that's a double negative.
How about that? We're back here and Everything Old is New again with Wayne Federman. You just heard a little piece of his stand-up, tremendous book that he just produced. The History of Stand-Up, from Mark Twain to Dave Chappelle. Wayne Federman, thank you for coming back after the commercial break here onto Everything Else.
I'm thrilled to be here.
It's great to have you. We're just getting rolling here. And when you talk in the book, and this is a great book, The History of Stand-Up, seriously, I don't think you miss too much, if anything. And what do I know? I think there's so much in here. We start from the beginning of all of what we can try to figure out what is the beginning, let's say, of stand-up comedy, which is Artemus Ward, you mentioned, Mark Twain, Burt Williams, Will Rogers, and you go and progress basically till today. We talk about the pandemic. So if you're interested in anything and everything comedy, this is the book for you. But let me just start with a quote that you have here in the book. Two quotes, and let's see if we can discuss this. Stand-up comedy is primarily a generational art form. With very few exceptions, it doesn't age too well. And in the second quote, in the same introduction you mentioned, the harsh fact is that many comics that were once hailed as hilarious, cutting edge, can, in just a few decades, seem out of touch, corny, and simply unfunny to current audiences. Let's first dive into that. So obviously you believe that there is some, or a majority, you tell me, of stand-up routines from the past that become stale over time.
Well, I don't know if the word stale is the right word, but yes, I absolutely believe that stand-up comedy is a very generational, of-the-moment kind of art form. Almost somebody described it as making sandcastles. And you're like, they make these incredible sandcastles, and then they're gone. And then new people make new sandcastles, and the other ones don't really resonate as much. No better example than Lenny Bruce. There's no better example, who was the edgiest, the most out there comedian of the time. And I talked to comedy friends of mine. They're like, I can barely get through the album. I'm like, I love Lenny Bruce, but it does take you have to make a jump into this kind of jazzy world that he talks in and all of that stuff to kind of get into what he's saying. So you don't agree with that?
I challenge it in some way. I agree with it.
I love it.
Yes, because there is some, let's put it this, the political stuff, of course, that goes right out. That doesn't work anymore, of course. But
right.
Let's talk about some more or less that are standards and well, first, before I challenge it, do you include teams, comedy teams, because you talk about solos mostly in the book.
As a rule, I mean, I mentioned there's three paragraphs about comedy teams in the whole book, because I think it is an adjunct to stand-up. But no, when I talk about stand-up, I'm not talking about comedy teams, and you might be talking about and I agree, that does still work, but that's a comedy team, you're sort of creating a scene, almost like a theatrical scene. There's tension between one guy and the other guy. So it's a little different, if you ask me.
Yeah, so that would be my first challenge, and I did recognize that in the book that you didn't focus on the team, and that certainly makes sense when you say that. So let's turn to then somebody like how about a George Carlin, a Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, Red Buttons doing Never Got a Dinner. There are lots of these that I think if you play, you still get a kick out of, but maybe I'm wrong. You tell me.
Well, a lot of it has to do with how old you were when you first heard this person. So to you, a lot of maybe you rehearing a Red Buttons routine, Never Got a Dinner, is like, oh, I remember when I saw this on the Dean Martin roast, or I remember when I saw him do this sitting on the couch with Johnny Carson. So a lot of times the memories get caught up with the actual comedy, whereas somebody, I don't know, 16 years old might not have any of that. So example of someone who transcends time, because he talked about big social issues that still apply today. And I'm actually working on a documentary about him right now. So he is, like I said, there are a few exceptions. He's one of them. And I think Richard Pryor is to an extent, but even Eddie Murphy was like, I would never do that kind of material I did back in 1982 now.
That's interesting. So let's go to the way back to somebody like and this may make your point or may not. Let's just look at it, because there are times you have to have an open mind with this, of course. And younger people, as all of us as we're young, we want our contemporary comedians. We want to hear the stuff right now. We don't always want to hear the stuff from the past. And so already when we see it in black and white, or we hear it on just like a radio broadcast, I think there's a prejudice that comes to it right off the bat. But if you listen to the old Jack Benny stand-up sometime, or you listen to I don't know, even Red Skeleton, and I know I'm dating myself, but you have to date yourself to go back to talk about this topic. I think I guess what I'm trying to say is there are laughs that you can have from. You may not have all of the laughs that they presented because some of it may miss. And we've done a show on Wheeler and Woolsey.
All of these guys.
Yeah.
Oh, you did? Oh, God, yeah. Look, all of those guys you said had great careers and were funny all through their career, but again, it's very generational when it comes to that stuff. And I feel like when you talk about Jack Benny's stand-up, you're really talking about Jack Benny's show more than his stand-up. And I love these guys. I like Will Rogers material. I'll go back even there. But I noticed that people very much like kind of their generation and on, and it's very hard for them to connect. I know, like at USC where I teach, like one of the teachers was like, "Oh, I can't believe you like Bob Hope's material. It seems so corny and ba-bump to me and shoddy." I'm like, well, yeah, it is a little bit. I mean, I have to admit it is. But if you can just like make that leap into the time, it's incredible to me. But again, it's so subjective. It's absolutely subjective.
Totally.
What do you think? How come I'm not hearing from David? How come I'm not hearing one word from this guy?
He doesn't let me speak. You can barely get a word in edgewise, Wayne. Think of me.
I love you guys are a comedy team. I see what's happening here. Okay.
David Cohen, let's see what you have to say. What's on your mind, brother?
Yeah, I was thinking about what you guys were, going on and on about, and I was thinking that one comedy bit that comes to mind that I loved when it came out after the OJ trial was the Chris Rock. He did an amazing,
yes,
and it's a classic. And yes, if I go back and watch that again, I probably will laugh at it, even though I've seen it before. I appreciate what he did and the the humor behind it. But now, Wayne, I understand your point. If my son, who is 22, if he watched it, I don't know if he'd have the same reaction. Part of it was because of the current events that were happening at the time, but part of it is, my son, these guys, they go to see comedy these days. It's different. It's not necessarily just, set up and punchline. A lot of it is just stream of consciousness, like very avant-garde type of comedy that's appealing to them. Whereas, the traditional hokey stuff, they might consider something that Chris Rock did.
Wow. Well, I mean, again, Chris Rock is like he's on the Mount Rushmore. We're certainly near in the argument for that. So yes, if you're taking the greatest practitioners of it, absolutely, their stuff I think does a lot of it, or a big chunk of it does transcend. But it's hard to argue because we're arguing about something so subjective. It's like some people never Jack Benny, even in his prime, even in the 30s and 40s, they were like, I can't this. And they were more Fred Allen guys. And they're like, that's comedy to me. So it's hard to argue for something so subjective.
Right, but it lends itself to the argument you love to have, which is what we say about our show, and I thank you for indulging us in that, because the history of stand-up from Mark Twain to Dave Chappelle will get you thinking about this when you read this book. You will go back, and you also want to say to yourself, wow, I really feel bad that I've never gotten an opportunity to see, Mark Twain on stage. And I know we're not talking about just the genesis of comedy. When you read this book and when you were researching it, didn't you feel like, holy smokes, let me go to YouTube and look up Mark Twain? Oh, that's right, he's not around. Like, how can we judge those that we just hear that others, talked about? It's impossible, right? But nonetheless, they're the foundation.
Possible, yeah. There's no recordings of Mark Twain, but there is some transcripts written of his speeches and stuff. I can say is he was getting laughs. He toured the entire world in the 1800s. So somebody at that time was really enjoying what he was doing in India, in England, in Germany, in Austria, all over the world. They were loving, couldn't get enough of this guy. So all I can say is I think that's interesting. Whether or not his references and I don't know who, what exactly he was talking about appeal to me is not, to me, the secondary thing. I don't to study stand-up comedy. It's like, oh, this guy's great to me. It's the bar. I think like, oh, people at that time thought he was funny, so that's why he's significant in history. And somebody like Don Rickles, who I adore. I know people are just like, I can't take it. I just can't. It's too incendiary for a way. I'm like, well, he's kidding, right? And they're like, well, it doesn't sound like he's kidding. It sounds like he's every ethnicity except Jews.
Well, you know what? I'm going to stop you there, Wayne, because I want to take that up in the next section. It's exactly what I was going to talk about next. So let's take a break here, and we'll come right back with Wayne Federman on Everything Old is New Again. These days, the news is full of teen suicide, drug and alcohol abuse. It's depressing and concerning, but there is hope. Former WWE Intercontinental Champion Mark Marrow.
Champion Choice is a live presentation that empowers students to make positive choices and live their best lives. Teach students how to live a drug-free life, prevent bullying, avoid peer pressure, and keep negative people out of their lives. We are defined by our choices. There is hope.
To schedule a Champion of Choices presentation for your school or organization, visit thinkpos.org.
This is Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show.
I never actually thought I was funny. You may think I don't have any talent. I guarantee you, I had no talent. None. Remember, you are a thought machine. Everything you see, hear, experience is usable. Whatever makes you unique as a performer, do it. And know that there's room for you. Hey, welcome to Steve Martin's Masterclass.
Here we go. Everything Old is New Again. We're at the Wayne Federman Masterclass here, talking about his book, which is amazing. You got to get involved. You can get it anywhere, of course. The History of Stand-Up. There's no book like this, by the way. You're not going to be able to see shelves and shelves of this material. This has it all and all you need. The History of Stand-Up from Mark Twain to Dave Chappelle. It's going to reignite, I guarantee you, your interest in comedians of the past, and going to want to say to yourself, maybe I can watch some of their TV shows, listen to their radio shows. But more than that, I think it's going to be wet your whistle for when we get out of this pandemic here and hopefully see some stand-up again. Wayne Federman, thanks for coming back.
You're welcome.
Now that was...
It took a lot of arm twisting off the air between segments here.
Well, I'm always amazed when people actually stick around here, No, the point there is, but I'll ask the question, can anyone be taught how to perform and be a comedian? And do you think that's what he's saying there?
No, I don't think that's what he's saying. But I think that a lot of people can be taught, but I do think there is a certain, it's when they say sense of humor, it's like a sense, like a smell or touch or something. It's something you're born with that you can't develop that. And some people just have an elevated view of, like, look at Larry David. Like, that's just a funny guy, you know, whether he would have made it in showbiz or not. He has that weird thing, and you can see it immediately. I don't think anyone can, but, and again, I teach a class, so it's, some people I do think are hopeless, but most people are like, kind of get a sense of it and can figure it out. I've seen it. I've seen people that weren't like a funny person figure it out like a math problem. She did it as a math problem, and she has a great career.
If you have the interest, if you're looking at Steve Martin or you're taking your class at USC, you already have that interest in it. You have that maybe in the back of your mind that you want to do it. So maybe at some point something inspired that. So maybe that person brings to the table that sense of humor, right? I mean, that makes sense.
Maybe. I mean, yes. Some people are just like, oh, this is a fun class. I'm taking organic chemistry and molecular biology. I'd like to laugh for a few hours, and I get to hang out with Wayne Federman and a bunch of funny kids. So there's that also. But I'm really focused on what Steve Martin just said. That's amazing. Didn't he just say that he's not talented?
Yes.
Well, see, he created I'm going to teach myself the banjo. I'm not talented. I'm going to teach myself magic tricks. I'm not talented. I'm going to teach myself balloon animals. And one of the great guys I talk about Steve Martin, because he was the first rock star comedian. He was, I know you're from Long Island. He was headlining the Nassau Coliseum. These are places Led Zeppelin played. You were there?
Both of us were there. Yep.
He did the hidden dime trick. He did the hidden dime trick.
Oh, I love it for the people in the back.
Sitting in the back, yeah.
And King Tut, of course, he came out and did that as well.
Oh, my God, I had no idea. So that's 78. When I was hanging out with Bob Hope, you're hanging out with Steve Martin. Is this right?
We didn't want to say it before, but yeah.
Us and 16 other thousand people that
I love it. Tell me more about that show before I get into it, because I want to talk about Wally Bogue as soon as you're finished with that. Go
Absolutely.
ahead.
David Cohen, I could tell a story, but you have something in mind about that show? I remember.
Yeah, no, I remember how hard I laughed at the hidden dime trick because it was so absurd.
Right.
And the people in our section who were sitting up in the boondocks where we were, I've never been in an arena where a thunderous laugh just erupted with thousands of people around you all at once. It was just amazing to be part of it and to hear it. So that part I remember. Other parts, are kind of vague, but because it was a long time ago.
It was just,
what do you remember?
To me, it was just an amazing experience. First of all, I think I was 16. It was the first concert that I ever went to, first concert T-shirt I ever had, and it was with Steve Martin.
Is there an open act?
There was.
Was there an opening act?
I don't believe that. I don't remember. I don't remember. I remember he did something on film first. He did a film clip first that was funny, and then came out.
Yeah, he plays the absent-minded waiter play before his concerts. Yeah, okay, I love it. I'm so proud of you guys. You saw him. That's a historic show because those are the first arena tours ever for a comedian. And now Sebastian Maniscalco sold out Madison Square Garden. 4 shows over 2 nights, 2 Friday, 2 Saturday, made $8.2 million.
Yes, and I just can't. It's so comedy is stand up is still alive. That's for sure. Let me
still alive. It's booming. It's booming.
But we've got this issue of not getting out to see them in person, so to speak. Is there a difference between, certainly for the comedian it is, but for the audience, of course, for stand up on television versus in person?
Of course. But in the same way, it's like Bob Newhart. I'm sure you know, got his start releasing a record on Warner Brothers in 1960. So. And at the time, here's a really interesting thing in my book, The History of Stand-Up, that some of the more established comedians, like Alan King, was like, why should I put my act out on a record for $2.98 when I'm making $8,000 a week in Vegas? They didn't even understand the thing. And cut to Bob Newhart has had this amazing, not that Alan King hasn't had a great career, but Bob Newhart is like the new Jack Benny. There's no question about it. Huge series after series after series. So, it's comedy is constantly changing. In a weird way, Bob Hope was reacting. Well, his act was different than the comedians that were before him. So
and talking about those albums, it does evolve. You're right. And talking about those albums, it went from the relatively clean Bob Newhart to Red Fox, which was the exact opposite. And that album I still play once in a while today. So yeah, if you think about it, it does always.
Well, he had like 30 albums. There was like 30 Red Fox albums. True. There was a lot of them.
I could only afford one of them.
Can I go back to Wally Bogue?
Yes, please do.
Because Wally Bogue, a lot of people probably not heard of. He was the end of vaudeville, and then he did burlesque, and then he toured nightclubs. He was in that area, did a couple of Ed Sullivan shows, and then started working at Disneyland in 1955 at the Golden Horseshoe Revue, did 5 shows a day there for 20-some years, maybe 25 years. That's where 10-year-old Steve Martin saw him. It was the first comedian he ever saw. And guess what Wally Bogue does in his act? Balloon animals.
Oh, wow.
The same thing you saw at Nassau Coliseum. What does Wally Bogue do? He sings and dances. What does Steve Martin do? He can't dance, he does Happy Feet. He sings, he does King Tut. So it's like he got a lot of his kind of inspiration of what comedy could be. And believe me, if you were a cutting-edge 60s who was into Lenny Bruce and Mort Saul, you would have thought Wally Bogue was the corniest old-school comedian you ever saw. But Steve Martin, because he's a genius, so it's like, oh, there's something here, because he's making these tourists at Disneyland laugh. And so I just love that connection. Like, that's the guy that inspired Steve Martin, not Jonathan Winters or one of these crazy headliners. So it's really interesting. That's part of the story of stand-up.
Which is what I love, because it brings all of that about. It also brings out an explanation of what the word blue means. In vaudeville, you used to perform, and you get a blue envelope after the show with all your offending words and references and told to take them out of the act. So the first question I would say and ask you, because later on, when cable TV came around, and of course we talked about Lenny Bruce in the 60s, try to break those barriers and were able to be more, what would you say, offending or vulgar, if you will. The limitation that was placed on comedians up until that era around there, let's say 60s to 80s, before that limitation, did it affect for the better or worse or nothing at all with respect to the creativity that the stand-ups had to do to try to overcome this this stuff? Because now you can just say whatever you want whenever you want.
That's a great debate. And there are people that think that it was more creative if you had to kind of figure a way out and around it, like the Smothers Brothers did. Like, they couldn't do certain things, but they're like, hey, we want to get our message out. I'm a big believer in free speech. And I think if you look at George Carlin's career, you can see that his ability to say anything as incendiary. At times it seems like he's just trashing capitalism in America, and religion. I mean, these are real fundamental belief systems he's attacking as a comedian. I mean, that's insane, like how bold he was to do all that. So I am more of a free speech guy, but I think we can all admit there's comedians that just take that advantage, take that liberty, and it's just vulgar for no reason at all. Like, I think we can all agree with that, right?
We can. We did a show on comedy and stand-ups and all that, and Doug and I had a big argument over, the use of swear words and blue material versus working clean, as they say. And my point was that, I don't care. You say whatever you want. To me, the measuring stick is it funny?
Of course.
If it's vulgar and it's funny, then it's good. If it's vulgar and it's not funny, then it's just vulgar.
But we saw the other side of the fence is, and we got to get to a commercial break. We'll continue this in a moment. But we saw at Eastside Comedy Club all these years ago, Gilbert Gottfried, before, of course, he was on Saturday Night Live, even if you remember that, and he was doing a routine, seemed to be off the top of his head, but regardless, was hysterical, probably the funniest stand-up we've seen. We're no experts, but from what we've seen, and then I see him do this stuff that's a little more blue or dirty on the roasts, and to me, it was funnier to watch him clean and work around and talk about what he was talking about, if you remember, David, on stage back then. So, it's so subjective, but we'll get back to Wayne Federman talking about this. Hey, to take up too much time, but we've got to, because this is a tremendous book, The History of Stand-Up from Mark Twain to Dave Chappelle. I'm telling you, you're not going to want to put it down, and you're going to really get turned on by stand-up comedy right off the bat. We'll be back. This Everything Else New again.
This is Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Hi, this is comedian Wayne Federman. I am the author of a new book called The History of Stand-Up from Mark Twain to Dave Chappelle, and I am on Everything Old is New Again with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Oh, good.
I can't believe you, Steve Martin at the Nassau Coliseum. I'm losing it here. I'm losing it.
We're just fans of comedy. We literally went to Eastside Comedy Club when we were 16. Who did that? And we went almost every weekend.
And that was Gilbert Gottfried.
Sure, so a lot of Bobby Collins.
Didn't see Collins too much. No, we saw.
Okay.
I think that maybe I think he was there when we were in college in the early '80s.
Well, Eddie Murphy was on
Yeah.
a lot when we were there.
Right.
When we were going there before SNL, and we thought he was hilarious, of course. But the point I wanted to make about Gilbert Gottfried was way before Gilbert Gottfried became like Gilbert Gottfried, that shtick he does, that voice he does. He was just a normal, run-of-the-mill white
very
guy doing
talented
stand-up,
comedy.
but he was very, very funny.
Oh, yeah, of course. He was like the comedian's comedian.
Yeah.
Because he could do Belzer.
Before he did the whole Gilbert Gottfried thing.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
He better know. Now listen.
Who am I talking about?
Yeah.
Wayne, I don't know if you know the history of comedy.
You heard of Bob Hope?
I'm pretty familiar with Gilbert's trajectory.
Now, wait, can you do me a favor?
I'm usually talking to Doug, so I feel like I have to explain a lot.
Okay. I should just watch you two go back and forth. That's good.
We're going to have some fun here with Wayne Federman next week. He had to leave for a few moments here. We just had him on for the last 3 sections, and what a great time. Good times with Wayne Federman. We're going to continue talking about the history of stand-up from Mark Twain to Dave Chappelle, David Cohen here as well. Continuing, David, the interview was going good. I think it was a lot of fun so far, and then you had to take a turn teaching him about history of
yeah.
comedy.
Well, I think that's the first instance of mansplaining to another man, which I was very proud of. I guess I do that. I really thought about that after, and I thought, like, of all the people to have to just, not only did I explain it to him, that was bad enough, right? Because, he knew. So that was innocent enough that explaining what we saw and, the before and versus the after. But then, I didn't think he got it. And I had to say, see, what really happened, though, was that he used to do it a different way. So that was the part where I thought long and hard about that, Doug, afterwards, and I think
you lose sleep
I
over
do that
it?
a lot to everybody, and I have to stop doing that.
What does the wife say about that? Have you done it to her?
I explained it to her, and she was in total agreement. Yeah.
Did she have chills? Did you?
No, she just said, "Yeah, you do that to me all the time."
Oh my! But she let she see. So the problem is, she is so nice and what would you say, well balanced and together that she just lets you do it, and it just goes off. And she's like, "Yeah, okay, I'll let him do that. I'm not going to talk about mansplaining. I'm not going to get angry with him. He is who he is." And I guess that's what I'm stuck with for the next.
I think when you're with someone for so long, you kind of accept those sort of things.
Exactly.
You just live with it. That's the way they are. And if it gets too out of hand, you might say something, right? But,
she literally probably turns her back to the sink and washes her hands and rolls her eyes when you're talking like this. Just bites the bullet.
I'd like to think she doesn't, but she probably does.
Oh, my God. Here we go again. But literally, the man wrote a book called The History of Stand-Up. And David Cohen is turning to him and saying, one of the most famous comedians today, we saw when he was in the beginning of his career. Do you know his beginning of his career? Have you ever heard of him? Do you know that he...
And that wasn't enough. Yes, he says, that was... I know. Yeah, because what he used to do,
I love when he goes,
I just wouldn't stop. That was the bad part.
I know the trajectory of...
Yes.
Gilbert Gottfried's
I am familiar
career.
with the trajectory.
I literally teach a class at UCLA in stand-up comedy, and I wrote the book. There's only one book, by the way, in the world that I'm aware of stand-up comedy. It's the history of stand-up from Mark Twain to Dave Chappelle by Wayne Federman. I'm telling you, actually, by the way, it's a pretty cool book.
Yeah.
Dead silence. No, it really is. It's.
I guess I should read it. I would have known that he knew about Gilbert Gottfried. See, I didn't do my research.
Yes, exactly. And he did, and this is the second person, as I spoke to Michael Elias, who was one of the writers of Steve Martin's career in the early days and one of the writers of The Jerk. And he also spoke about the Nassau Coliseum and Steve Martin playing it and how historic it was. And it was to us, it was like, oh my goodness, there's a comedian playing at a location that's going to have, I guess it was, you have to say 18,000 people.
It was a major indoor sporting. They hosted hockey and basketball. I mean, it was a big thing. But we were kids back then. We didn't. I didn't appreciate it.
It's like being a kid in the 1920s. Like when we were born. If we were born 1910. And it was 1927, and we're at Yankee Stadium watching the Yankees. Are you going to say to yourself, "Oh my God, I'm watching allegedly the best team of all time"?
Right?
You're just going to just going to go through it. But like my grandfather, who did go through that in the 70s, looked back and would tell me about that, and he would revere those players and the times at that. In hindsight, of course, But when you're going through it, you don't know what you're doing.
No, and because we used to see concerts there, right? So this wasn't a concert. This was just Steve Martin. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, let's go see Steve Martin there. There was no context other than it was another show to go to, and we love Steve Martin, so why not? And it was a fun show, and didn't have any,
But we never thought to ourselves
significant.
Right, we never thought to ourselves, holy smokes, no comedian. Other than
I never said holy smokes, but so
that's true. I think I might have said it, but I think I might have said golly gee. It might have been that might have been my vernacular back then, and it would have said no one's ever done this before. Like literally that what we're aware of since, let's say, recorded comedy. I mean, there's been I have to say stand-up comedy. I bet you existed back in the Roman days too. In some level or another, though they weren't civilized. I'm sure it was more barbaric, so to speak. But the point being, there had to be people on stage. There were comedies back then, people laughing at this person and that person, whatever. But for all intents and purposes, for all the world that we're aware of, it's the first time that anyone has ever just stood on stage before 18,000 and made them laugh. Think about that. They do it now, commonplace. Never been done before. So I guess that's why all these people are all kind of freaked out that we were there.
Yeah,
and
it was the start of a trend, but we didn't know that.
Right. And I remember buying the T-shirt. I had the T-shirt for many years.
Yeah.
Did you? The black T-shirt, the one they would sell them in the parking lot.
That's
and all
right.
That.
I had that too.
Oh, it was the greatest. And literally, that was my first concert, by the way, including bands and stuff.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. First one to go to at a big coliseum like that. We used to go back in the day. If you remember, this is late 70s. There were bands playing out in clubs all over the place.
Because I remember you turned to me at one point and said, "Yeah, this is great, but imagine like a band playing here." Yeah, it's called a concert.
Can you imagine this place filled with sound, with music? And then he did King Tut at the end. By the way, remember that?
Yeah, that's right.
Dressed up and all that stuff.
So it was a sort of a semi-concert for you, yeah.
That was my first. Actually, the Nassau Coliseum at the time, that was 70. Am I right? That was 78, I think. Something like that.
Yeah.
In 73 and 72, maybe you did this too. I went to go see the New York Nets play with Julius Erving in the Nassau Coliseum.
Yeah, I saw him. He scored I saw him one game. He scored over 60 points. I remember.
Yeah, the guy was absolutely amazing. I guess you could say, and I don't know if this is fair, but Earl Monroe told us this, that he didn't believe the competition was as significant as the NBA at the time. Though you could reel off tons of names of players that were in the ABA that made a great career in the NBA when they merged. So I don't 100% know that that's a real strong argument or not, but the doctor was certainly a hero, but he was more than a hero. He was like what do you say? He was like a Babe Ruth back then. He was iconic. Of course,
not about Babe Ruth
on Long Island. I'm just saying for Long Islanders.
Long Islanders.
He was iconic for Long Islanders. You went to the Nassau Coliseum, and of course the Islanders played then too. Of course,
well, that was that was the big thing when we were growing up. When they were good.
Yeah, what if 4 or 5 Stanley Cups in a row, right?
No,
4. They lost
I think
the fifth
it was 4.
one. Lost the fifth one to Edmonton in the 80. But I mean, that was an unbelievable run. So that Coliseum really was an amazing building with lots of stuff going on. And now it's got literally nothing going on. All the teams have left because of this silliness, whatever they do with these. I don't know how it all works, but bottom line is they've lost 2 teams. They've lost the circus. I don't know what else.
Wait. There was Nassau, but what was the one near us? The
Comac Arena.
The Comac Arena.
Yes, and after that they had a drive-in there. You remember that?
But didn't the Ducks, Long Island Ducks, used to play hockey at the Comac Arena?
They did, and the Nets played there for their first year. I think it was 71 or 72. Yeah.
Wow.
And Peter Frampton Comes Alive was recorded there.
At the Comac Arena?
Yes.
Come on.
Frampton Comes Alive. We'll be
Are
back.
you serious?
Oh, yeah. I'm very serious.
I got to Google that, baby. I don't know about that.
Absolutely. I'm telling you. It was a little before my time. What was that, 76? I was 14. There's no way I could have gone to see that concert. Would have loved to. That was an unbelievable situation. Then it was a flea market. Then it became then they tore it down. It became a drive-in theater. And now it's a Target.
Is that what it is now?
Yeah. There you go. All right, speaking of all things fun, we'll be back next week to talk about the history of stand-up again with Wayne Federman on Everything Old is New Again, from Mark Twain to Dave Chappelle, the history of stand-up. Wayne Federman, David Cohen, Douglas Viviani. We'll be back on Everything Old is New Again.